Hey everybody, how you doing? This is TIPM SR Live. I'm your host, True Powers Mind. Today, I want to talk about the argument for reparations. Now, I know a lot of people are throwing in the towel on the whole notion, but this kind of goes back to the whole ideal or concept of the hub too. I normally don't take too much from NRP, but this report I treat a little differently. I give a little more credence to it. So let's check it out.
The 20th century, Black people in the U.S. were dispossessed of 12 million acres of land. Half of that loss.
Now, 12 million acres dispossessed in the last century. Now, surely that's all on the books, and we could track who that belongs to and give them an economic either compensation, meaning money, or them back the land.
6 million acres occurred over just 2 decades, from 1950 to 1969, a period largely associated with the civil rights struggle.
And at the same time, you're struggling for the rights to work up in Chrysler or another corporation. Your base, your personal family hub is being ripped away.
Mass land dispossession, which affected 98% of Black agricultural landowners, is part of the pattern of institutional racism and discrimination.
Remember the Great Migration? Getting away from the rural areas so you don't get lynched or whatever and go up to the city and just get shot.
That's contributed to the racial wealth gap in the United States. Many of the driving forces behind this land theft were legal and originated in federal policies.
So now here comes the argument. It's the federal government, which happens, by the way, also gives you most of your civil liberties is through federal mandates, executive orders, and federal law.
In a new article on the history of this massive land theft, our next guest writes, unlike their counterparts even 2 or 3 generations ago, Black people living and working in the Delta today have been almost completely uprooted from the soil. Van Newkirk is a staff writer at The Atlantic, where he covers politics and policy. His new piece, The Atlantic's September cover story, is headlined The Great Land Robbery. Can you tell us what this robbery is, Van?
Yes, so
now his name is Fan, almost like Finn from Star Wars. You know, it's pretty sad that we got to look towards movies to be validated on some of these thought processes.
the robbery refers to over the course mostly of the 20th century and the mid 20th century and beyond, federally funded and federally directed in some cases, discriminatory effort against African American farmers that wound up by several mechanisms with those farmers losing, like you said, 6 million acres of land over just 19 years, from 1950 to 1969, and most of it concentrated around the civil rights.
Now, 6 million acres of land. Let's jump over here real quick. How many acres of land is there in the United States of America? Now, you're talking about 6 million acres, but there's 2.3 billion acres in this country. Once again, Dr. Claude Anderson, Millie Fuller, is right. We always have only had like a fraction of a percent of this nation's wealth. And even that is being taken away. There it is right here. 2.3 billion acres. This dude said right here, we'll replay it for y'all. So, you know, I'm not saying it. It's him.
That's 6 million acres of land over just 19 years, from 1950 to 1969. And most of it concentrated around the civil rights movement.
Now, hold on. Let's get back to wait, hold
on. And federally directed in some cases, discriminatory effort against African American farmers that wound up by several mechanisms.
Now, they never really go into this report to speak on these several mechanisms. They just really focus on the federal land grab or the federal or the local people's ability to make up laws to take away the land.
With those farmers losing, like you said, 6 million acres of land over just 19 years, from 1950 to 1969.
And basically that would accomplish 98% of the African American rural farm population being affected by this particular land policy. But there's 2.3 billion acres, y'all. 2.3 billion. It's sad, man. It's sad that we don't recognize what's going on. I mean, we could take all these folks and put them up in the state of Alaska, which happens to have 375 million acres. Just in the state of Alaska, we can easily put in 6 million acres. If you don't have land, you have nothing. Land is everything. With land, you can make facilities. With land, you can make farms. You can make animal confinement. You can produce goods and eatery. But that's not what they want you to be about now, is it? You need to be about the new, latest trend. Trendy. Just be trendy and you'll make it. But that's not the case. Many people really need to be in a real situation. Many people really need the great expanses. Being able to walk in the woods and not see another human face. That's a very beautiful thing. Being able to kayak down a river or stream and not have to hear music or see people, that's a very beautiful thing. Just being able to take a motorcycle and ride off into the desert for miles and not see another soul. Once again, it's a beautiful thing. But a lot of people don't experience that because, well, let's face it, they're at the bottom of the barrel. Let's continue.
And most of it concentrated around the civil rights movement, with a lot of that land being taken, a lot of those funds being denied purposefully with the intent of keeping Black folks from protesting for their civil rights.
So explain this period, this pivotal period, when millions of acres were taken from Black Americans.
Oh, stop trying to hype it up, Amy. Because you're underscoring the real story. The real story, why do they only own 6 million acres? Out of the, 2.3 billion acres in the country? Why? Why is that the case?
1950 to 1969.
Right. The federal government has, they installed a couple of programs during the Great Depression that were basically created American agriculture as we know it today. They heavily subsidize crop growing. And
that's the problem, guys. A lot of people know, you know about the Freeman Bureau, you know about the Bureau of Indians Affairs, how these organizations traditionally have been corrupt. What's up, Brother Bird? Welcome to the show. And disdainful. Now, the organization he's going to talk about later is really sad, but the effect is still the same. You basically fund other people who you deem racially worthy, and you suppress funding to other people who you deem non-racially worthy. And this is the root of the problem.
And controlled prices when commodity prices went too low.
So much for capitalism, huh? So next time you hear some bullshit motherfucker espousing, oh, capitalism this, capitalism that, you remember most of the steaks he's eating is coming from a subsidized farm, period.
And they also promoted the creation of larger and larger and more consolidated farms. Those efforts serve to drive lots of small.
Consolidated farms is a nice modern way of saying plantation.
Farmers of all races off their farms, but it actually manifested in a kind of novel and even more dire way in heavily Black places in the United States. So Black folks didn't have a whole lot of land, but they did have sizable holdings in places like Mississippi, which I wrote about. But what those federal reforms did is they gave the money to locally elected boards, and in places across the Deep South, Black folks could not vote on those boards. So basically, it gave the plantation owners, their children, their grandchildren, the people who had been on the side of the Confederacy in the Civil War and their descendants, it gave them even more power to dispossess and disenfranchise Black farmers. And they used that power pretty extensively to the tune of almost the entirety of Black farming collapsing.
I want you to really understand that. At the same time, Black farms are literally being wiped out by this federal organization. What's happening in the media? You know, on the song and dance tip, they make people looking from the country looking bad and stupid. People from the city, oh, this is awesome. That's what you want to be. So you're having a physical attack with your farm being taken, the land, the ground being taken, and you're having a psychological attack at the same time, being programmed with all these whack-ass ideals. And you still think it's a game, and you still think they're playing around. We're talking about the fucking 50s to the 60s. The play has already gone down, y'all. And for those of you who don't understand what reparations is totally about, it's about making amends for a wrongdoing. Now, if you don't want to go all the way back to slavery, which is so totally unpopular, because we'll be freeing everybody then. Let's just go back to the 60s and the 50s and identify those families and think how many families that were probably utterly annihilated by this program, meaning the whole bloodline died out. So keep on thinking this is a game. Keep on clowning around. Keep on running around with your false sense of power.
I want to turn to a video of Willie Scott White, who's featured in your piece, Van. The Scott family is one of the few families who were able to reclaim land that was possessed by the USDA. She talks here about what happened to her father's land and what that land means to her family.
It grieves me that we were denied a history, and that's how I see it. And I'm gonna try not to cry.
You know, before she starts crying and all that, fuck some history. It denied you economic viability. It denied you the ability to walk up on this land, pitch a tent, and cook a little cookout in the whole 9 yards. Forget some history. But see, this is where I always get so upset. Someone always wants to tell a damn story. The stories are being told right now in our lives. But let's let her continue and shed her tears.
It's dear to me that my children know what my ancestors went through for us to be where we are and who we are. Because I'm a firm believer that if we don't know our history, then we repeat the mistakes over and over again.
Well, I tell you one thing, firm believer, if you can be indoctrinated to hear a little catchy 5-second soundbite, you're going to repeat it a lifetime. Man, that's some bullshit. You are what you dare to be. If it happens to link up with someone who dared the same thought as you, so what? That's what it is. But just merely knowing history, that most cases the history we've been taught is unvalidated and it's not factual, then that's the problem. That's a true problem. Now we can keep on playing these games, keep on avoiding the supremacy in the room and the activities, or we can talk about it and deal with it like rational human beings. Let's continue.
My dad's land was taken. It was not foreclosed on by USDA. My dad went in and applied for money to irrigate his beans because it was so hot. The county agent refused to give him a loan to water his crops. He said, y'all not supposed to be farming like this. Y'all farming like white folk. So he cut everything in half that year. This is when they started not being able to get enough money to farm with.
Atlantic Studios. Then can you tell us the story of the Scott family, how their land was lost, how they came to regain it?
Lena's grandfather, Ed Scott Sr., he came from Alabama and got over to Mississippi in the late 19th century. He became a titan in his corner of Mississippi, was just an incredibly gifted farmer, was in many ways more well respected than some local white farmers by the white establishment. And he was one of those farmers who was just talented and lucky enough to be able to purchase a plot of land, his first 100 acres, from a local guy, P.H. Brooks, a white landowner. And he became one of the early middle-sized landowners, black landowners in the region. He encouraged all of his children to get their own plots of land. They kept it all in common. And over the course of his lifetime, built up just through sheer talent and force of will, about 1,000 acres of land. His son, Ed Scott Jr., took over in the middle of the 20th century, took over, he fought in World War II, came back, and also became an incredibly talented farmer and farm manager. He also added to those land holdings. What both of them did that marked them as really unique is they managed to not really dabble in or seek out federal funds. They emphasized heavily self-sustainability and leaning on private funding to keep their farm afloat. But in the 1970s and 80s, when we had the major farm crisis and inflation crisis, Ed Scott Jr. had to reach out for federal money. And like Willie said, when he started reaching out, he got a little...
I'm glad he brought that up. For a lot of you guys who don't give a fuck about farming, I just want to let you know it's getting bad for farmers out there. The little trade war, tariffs are hitting them hard. And when the tariffs are hitting on the Chinese side, the United States government not necessarily compensating for that discrepancy, meaning they're not buying up the harvest. So I guess this show is more focused for the rural folks out there on the land, tilling it. Brothers and sisters, you're not forgotten. I know you guys are going through a lot of tough things right now, and please write me, truepowerismine@gmail.com. Share your videos, share your stories, and I will get them out. Because if we don't grow a thing, we don't eat a thing, folks. And once again, your little suburbs and cities and rural towns and villages, without the food, they become savage zones really quick. Now, I just want to put this up there so everyone sees. U.S. farmers getting hit by Chinese tariffs. All right. This only came out a couple of days ago. Well, listen to this gentleman real quick. And this is part of commentary. If there's no video, then we have to move on. Okay, this video came out August 5th. Now that's been 20-something odd days ago. The economic effect, and don't forget, the year before last, when we started to purge all the illegals, we had crops dying on the ground. So, or rotting on the ground, rather. So there's been a lot of bad stuff happening.
Look what Schwab saved me on 500 shares of that tech stock.
Okay. I love how these new commercials are trying to show, like, you know, everybody's gelling.
Trade
like
up to Schwab, the better place for traders.
It's not really the case. Oh, no. There's going to be one of those type videos. Never mind. I'm sorry, y'all. You know, we'll just stick to the script.
A little bit the first year, but then you see the local power structures realize this guy's maybe farming like white folks. The trucks he drives are a little too shiny. And the real difficulty comes when he tries to get into catfish farming, which is heavily subsidized by the federal government. They only offer him the dollar amount that's about.
Yeah, and this is for all you preachers that like to have that fish fry Friday night dinner. You know what I'm saying? How much of that fish is being grown by black folks that could potentially be in your little audience giving you money the following Sunday? See, that's why I always tripped out when I saw a lot of these big time preachers and the way they actually interact on the day to day. And then when I finally heard the information from Dr. Fuller, it just clicked. These guys would suck up all your money. But then when it's time to pay out money, they ain't paying shit to you. They're going right to the boy or the man or whatever you want to call him. Someone who really doesn't like you. You really can't work with him. You can't work for him. But that's who they're, who do you think they're buying that Cadillac from? Huh? When they go to rent out that condominium, who do you think's showing them that property? And it's next to that old raggedy ass church they're drawing all the money off of. Nope. That's what always baffled me when I would see this type of behavior, and I realized this is just a game, y'all. It's just a game. And the sooner we realize the stakes of this game, maybe that'll be the time we start playing correctly. Because we dropping balls right and left, y'all. Collectively, individually. But no one seems to give a damn.
About half of the average comparable white farmer who is frankly way less competent than Scott Jr. in the region. He gets half the money they get. So even starting out on that endeavor, the catfish endeavor, it's doomed from the start. And so they lose a lot of their land pretty quickly over the 80s and early 90s. And Willie kind of shepherded him through the major black farmers lawsuit, where they won a lot of it back on a discrimination case against the USDA.
So you talk about how ultimately Wall Street got very interested in the land. You write, for example, the Teachers Insurance and Annuity Association, TIAA, one of the largest pension firms in the country, as well as other corporate entities that all own tens of thousands of acres of land in Mississippi and surrounding states. How did these companies come to own this?
Well, think about it. The teachers ain't a far draw, Amy Goodman. Or Goodwin, or whatever hell her name is. When you think about what is the purpose of most of these teachers, it's not to educate the youth, is to downgrade them. So you're dumbing them down on the front end, and then on the back end, your teachers fund is zapping their land. So they're going to probably end up homeless and maybe some factory worker renting an apartment somewhere instead of a landowner that was passed down from generation to generation. If this was happening to any other group of people, people would be up in arms. There would be symposiums about this. There'll be way more knowledge about this. But because we are a people slated for deletion, and I'm just bringing this up because no one else will, this is how it's being achieved. This is how it's been achieved, and this is how it will be achieved. Unity and liberation, or education and indoctrination. Choice is yours.
Land. And what about the issue of reparations?
Farmland wasn't originally considered a really valuable investment asset. Farmland's volatile. It's difficult to predict from year to year what your yield's going to be, what your rents are going to be. It is an asset that has been considered really below sort of the sterling grade of investment classes. But after the Great Recession, when the dollar weakened, and with the future threats of both climate change and overpopulation, really placing a premium both on.
Here we go. Did you hear what he said? This guy's taking eugenics talking points. Climate change and overpopulation. Brother, I'm telling you, you are the one marked for deletion. You, right here. Not Amy. You. And when you make statements like that, you should expound upon them so that people really understand, because a lot of people just gonna eat that up like slop. Oh yeah, climate change, people are over. Yeah, the wrong type of people. This earth has infinite resources, yo. It really does. We can feed ourselves and grow far greater in numbers than where we're at, even presently right now. But the deal is, as long as you have people who are purposefully harming segments of the environment which certain people live upon, and I'm talking about Flint, Michigan, I'm talking about downtown St. Louis, I'm talking about downtown most major cities. Well, there's high population of melanated people. There's also high concentration of lead, bromium, aluminum. So if they don't kill you on the water, they're going to chemtrail you immediately. And in case of puke, they actually had the chemicals at the doorway being vented. So as you're going in and out that building, you're getting hit. But these are all just pretendos, huh? This didn't happen back in the 70s. God knows what they're doing now. Already tried to warn you about 5G. Already tried to warn you about the medical system as a whole. But let's continue with the farmers, with those who should be given some sort of economic compensation for the malice and cruel way the government was used to devastate their ability to provide for future generations.
On land and on arable land for the production of food that's only going to increase in value, farmland became much more attractive to large investors, particularly pension funds. TIAA, which I write about in the piece, is kind of emblematic of the very sudden interest of pension funds in farmland across the United States. Right now, pension funds in the Mississippi Delta own more land than Black folks do there. And how that connects to my story is farmland, most of the farmland in the US is owned already. So where are investors going to look for land from? And it's going to be where it's coming up for auction, where it already is packaged into really large parcels. And that happens most often in the places where it's been stolen from Black folks or is being stolen from Black folks. So the Mississippi Delta is where some of the largest portfolios in the US are. Connecting to reparations, for one, Wall Street is a major interest right now in farmland that was once owned by Black folks. And we have to reckon with that. And we have to reckon with the fact that it was United States federal policy that allowed that. So how do we reckon with the fact that now this lucrative asset class is making money for lots of people across the country who have pension funds, maybe even outside the country, and it's not making money for the African-American farmers and descendants of those farmers who live there, who were enslaved there, and who made the land and who were basically tied to it and were discriminated against there. I think reparations has to be part of that conversation. You have to start thinking about, if the federal government took this money away, they've got to find a way to invest it back into them. And if you think about this as a federal investment in white farmers, in Wall Street eventually, why wouldn't it be ethical? Why wouldn't it be necessary for the federal government to invest in Black farmers the same way?
You're talking about something like 12 million acres of land. That's about the size of Vermont and New Hampshire combined. Your final comment, Van.
Yeah, 12 million acres. It is a
Hold on. How many acres are there in the state of Vermont? $5.9 million acres. That gives you a kind of comparable size of the 6 million acres they were discussing. I don't know how it ballooned to 12 million, but the 6 million acres in the beginning, size of a whole state of Vermont. Damn.
Amount of land, and it amounts to something north of hundreds of billions to perhaps trillions of dollars worth of land, legacy, culture lost.
But it's only that much if you're producing on the land. Now, if you're sitting up there on the land and you're letting the fields go fallow, you're letting everything grow up, you're not producing nothing, it's bad. But you're actually working, but you have to have a team of people willing to get out there and work. Come on, y'all. That's what it's about. You have to get out there in the fields. If you have some sort of disposition or, oh, that's below me, well, then this is where we're at. You better keep on going to your government for your daily bread and your daily circus, because that's all you're going to get, bread and circus, until they decide to final solution your ass out of existence. I keep trying to warn people. I keep trying to bring new information that they never heard of, seen, perhaps. But I can get the general sense right now. Nobody really wants to hear about saving this planet. Deep down, I think everybody really wants this thing to end. Not everybody, the viewers. I'm not talking about you guys. I'm talking about people running the show, people running the military, people running corporate America, people running conglomerate international corporations. I believe deep down they just want this thing to end. And guess what? The way they're going, it will surely happen. Let's wrap up this little report.
That's Titanic. And whatever policy comes next has to be just as Titanic.
Van Newkirk, we want to thank you so much for being with us, staff writer at Lee.
Yes, thank you, Van. Awesome guy. All right. Now, this for the record, yeah, I will never play any type of Vice material. I'm going to jump over here, and I'm going to do a little promo for CI, Cobra Immortal. All right. I just got to jump into my email real quick and get the track. Oh, wow. All right, let me get the track, and then we're going to take it from here. I don't know. I got a lot of emails since his last track. Oh, damn. Can't find his email. Hold on. Try to look at it like that. There it is. All right. We're going to play this little ditty and see what happens. I might have to put on the subwoofers for this. I don't know.
The streets, they be watching, they know I'll be popping. This beats that I'm dropping, the tracks I'll be bumping, you hearing me coming, I'm out here straight hustling. The streets, they be watching, they know I'll be popping. This beats that I'm dropping, the tracks I'll be bumping, you hearing me coming, I'm out here straight hustling. The streets know that I'ma be bumping, especially like the parking lot, you know what, keep it jumping. These people on these rappers, they don't even call back. Maybe cause I got these raps, they know I'm gonna spit it like that. Come from mortal man, cause I ain't even play no games. A lot of rappers in this industry, they be some lames, but they don't even mention make the music my name. They say that Cobra Mortal, they ain't got what it takes. You know that I'm here bringing them up, prove my haters wrong. I always put this thing when I put it on my songs. A lot of my homies, man, they only dead and gone. The streets, they know I'm hot, that's reason why I'm on. Hey. The streets, they be watching, they know I'll be popping. This beats that I'm dropping, the tracks I'll be bumping, you hearing me coming, I'm out here straight hustling. The streets, they be watching, they know I'll be popping. This beats that I'm dropping, The tracks I'll be bumping, you hearing me coming. I'm out here straight hustling. Yeah, they turn me up like a radio on a max radio. Oh, Cobo Mortal got them songs, they know I put it down. It's to the point, Crystal City repping for my town. I'm trying to get this industry rappers so gone. It's Cobo Mortal, man, you know I always stay strong. They don't mention my name when they mention on this music. They thought my endurance wasn't gonna be stupid. Hey, listen to the 808. Copa Mortal, man, cause I got what it takes. And all these people around me, yeah, they really wanna hate. A lot of rappers still Illuminati, yeah, they fake. Hey, the streets, they be watching, they know I'll be popping. This beats that I'm dropping. The tracks I'll be bumping, you hearing me coming. I'm out here straight hustling. The streets they be watching, they know I'll be popping. This beats that I'm dropping. The tracks I'll be bumping, you hearing me coming. I'm out here straight hustling.
Hey, welcome to the show, DJ, and thank you for the positive vibrations. All right, I'm going to hit up. Hold on 1 second. Bam. I'm going to see if Brother Air has something new on his channel.
This is a $30,000 vehicle loan. Would you hold that for me? And this is that same loan stretched out over 84 monthly payments. Talk to a State Farm agent like Eric about a State Farm Bank vehicle loan.
We got to survive more than that, yo.
Over here, 7 cents. All day, town. Over here, 7 cents today. We pay more in the bottom town. 7 cents. Heavier today. 70 cents today. 70 cents all day jumping. All I can do is imagine. 8 cent box, and you guarantee you if you pull today and we pull what we got to pull today, you have $11 in your pocket.
This is not taking place in the Congo. It has nothing to do with Johannesburg or Cape Town. It is not Nyasaland or Nigeria.
Oh man, look at that. This girl's taking it straight to the neck. And let's look at the clothing. Look at the people. I know this is back in the day, but you still can sense it. You still can feel the vibration.
This is Florida. These are citizens of the United States, 1960.
Smith's Grocery. This looks so sad.
This is a shape-up for migrant workers. The hawkers are chanting the going peace rate at the various fields. This is the way the humans who harvest the food for the best-fed people in the world get hired.
There it is, right there. Keep on eating your little frappuccinis, your little whatever cuisine, but you know that with brother and sister had to pick that off the vine, pull it out the ground, or pluck it off the tree.
One farmer looked at this and said, "We used to
Good morning, brother Shogun.
own our slaves. Now we just rent them."
Did you hear that? We used to own our... Listen to this again.
Chanting the going peace rate at the various fields. This is the way the humans who harvest the food for the best-fed people in the world get hired. One farmer looked at this and said, "We used to own our slaves. Now we just rent them."
You're just a rented slave. We used to have to shelter and whip them into work. Now they come begging to work. They'll bust down our borders to get in here to pick our shit. You best believe that's the way it really is.
The Secretary of Labor looked at the migrant plight and said,
"I think they're the great mass of what I've called the excluded Americans. They are people who cry out, workers and their children and their wives, who cry out for some assistance and whose plight is a shame. It's a shame in America."
Oh, it's a game in America. Take off the SH, take off the shit and put a G. Now it's a game. Now you see what's being played upon you, my friend.
The president of the American Farm Bureau Federation, the largest farmers organization, says,
"I think that most social workers would agree that it's better for a man to be employed, even if his capacity is such as to limit his income."
Did you hear what he just said? Social workers would agree it's better for a man to be employed, even if whatever the fuck he's doing limits his income, meaning he will be more of a burden to the state as far as economical viability. And he says this with a straight face because he knows. He knows. It is a sham, brother. A big time sham. And this dude knows it is. You got to exploit someone in this economic system. Traditionally, it's us. But more importantly, it's everyone nowadays.
And we take the position that it's far better to have thousands of these folks who are practically unemployable, earning some money, doing some productive work for at least a few days in the year.
This is an American story that began.
And what do they do the rest of the year? They starve, or they do some illicit activities, which brings them in income. And then all suddenly, guess what? They're not going to be picking this shit. They're going to be popping somebody. They're going to be selling dope to somebody. They're going to be stealing something from somebody. Keep on down the economic viability road, and crime is inevitable.
In Florida and ends in New Jersey and New York State with the harvest. It is a 1960 Grapes of Wrath that begins at the Mexican border in California and ends in Oregon and Washington. It is the story of men and women and children who work 136 days of the year and average $900 a year. They travel in buses. They ride trucks. They follow the sun.
Well, I don't know. It don't look like we'll ever get ahead. I guess we'll just have to keep going till we can find.
Look at old girl's teeth. She already looks like she's methed out, right? But that's not being methed out. She's just malnourished, worked to death. This is what was like before they had WIC and food stamps. This is the type of tragic shit people had to go to. But they want these good old days back, huh? These good old days. It's going to be good. It's going to be a celebration for the few. But for the many, it's going to be bloodletting and tears. Let's continue.
Something better.
A minister named Cassidy, who works with them, says,
They are just as bad as a slave. Only on name they are not a slave, but in the way they are treated, they are worse than a slave. And somebody has making thousands of dollars out of his sweat. Is that a slave or not?
No. No, it's not. A slave's a person, you're going to get beat the fuck down. You're going to get raped. You're going to be violated. You're going to be killed for no apparent reason. That's a slave. What you're talking about here, my friend, father, whoever he is economic non-viable personnel. Meaning, you have every right to go off into the woods and disappear or sit on the street and slowly emaciate yourself. Or you can get up and you can work for these little pennies. Choice is yours. They have a choice. They can always walk to the next town. A slave can't. Now, in a mental gymnastics kind of way, absolutely. Everyone's a slave. Everyone from the president of the United States down to the homeless man in Times Square right now. But in reality, everyone could potentially walk away. Slaves never had that option.
They are the migrants, workers in the sweatshops of the soil, the harvest of shame.
Copyright. I'm not playing any type of music, because that's a lie. I just got finished playing like several tracks, but those are from cool people. And I'm not gonna Marlboro. How in the hell is Marlboro gonna be talking about shaming something and they're killing everybody?
Harvest of shame. It has to do with the men, women, and children who harvest the crops in this country of ours, the best fed nation on earth. These are the forgotten people, the underprotected, the undereducated, the underclothed, the underfed.
Instead of under, these people need to hear some ender. Meaning there will be underfed, they will be understood, and they'll be better off. Let's continue.
We present this report of Thanksgiving because were it not for the labor of the people you are going to meet, you might not starve, but your table would not be laden with the luxuries that we have all come to regard as essentials. We should like you to meet some of your fellow citizens who harvest the food for the best fed nation on earth.
David Lowe talks to Mrs. Doby, 34 years old.
Notice there's no dude up in the picture, right? She got a lot of kids. And then she even has asbestos siding on this little shack. Those are asbestos tiles right there. I know because I'm in the construction industry and I can spot those things a mile away. So all these babies right here are being exposed to asbestos. See these chips? That means there's been damage. Any of that dust got in their lungs, they're done. She probably smoked cigarettes, probably drinks whiskey. And I'm sure that house contained a fair amount of lead. That's why old boy's just barely putting his foot on the porch. Let's continue.
Mother of 9 children.
Mrs. Doby, what things do you pick up north?
We pick strawberries and cherries.
Who works with you out of this family here?
Everybody except the baby.
Who takes care of them in the field?
Well, they just kindly stay along with us or take care of themselves. The one that can't walk usually stays in the baby buggy.
What is an average dinner for the family?
Well, you mean what do we have in?
Yes.
I cook a pot of beans and fry some potatoes or some corn or something like that.
Now, see, that's the type of chick that ain't going to understand when a person comes running up out of the woodwork something about white privilege. Did you hear what she just said that they have for dinner? Beans and fried fucking potatoes. The baby is in a buggy, probably getting sunburnt, unless they put it up underneath the shade tree. But they are actually getting their asses hammered every fucking, 53 days a year? Nothing to live on. No retirement coming. What do you think those kids' behavior was like during the 70s? Because this is happening in the 60s. I want to go, hold on, I'm going to scroll back just 1 second. Now you see the babies. Look at this little guy. You can see something not right in his eyes. Damn. And this is America. The untold, the unpleasant side of it. Because there's more of this chicks out there than you can shake a stick at.
9 children.
Mrs. Doby, what things do you pick up north?
We pick strawberries and cherries.
Who works with you out of this family here?
Everybody except the baby.
Who takes care of them in the field?
Well, they just kindly stay along with us or take care of themselves. The one that can't walk usually stays in the baby buggy.
What is an average dinner for the family?
Well, you mean what do we have in?
Yes.
I cook a pot of beans and fry some potatoes or some corn or something like that.
How many quarts of milk do you buy for the children?
Well, we don't have milk except maybe when we draw our paycheck, we have milk about once a week.
For all these children, you have
the
milk?
Baby has, she is on the bottle and she uses about 15 cans of milk a week. But the older children have milk about once a week.
Do they like to drink milk, Mrs. Doby?
Yes, they like milk.
The only reason I asked that question, I was quite shocked that they had milk only once a week.
Just thought they didn't like it, but they like milk, but there's so many, a gallon of milk will make them a glass around, and so we just can't afford it every day.
What do you want most for your children, Mrs. Doby?
Well, I'd like for them to have a career, whatever they want to be when they got older. Of course, the smaller ones, don't realize yet to know what they'd like to be. But the older girl, she'd like to go to school if she could. Of course, she'll probably
look at the anger. Oh, already flashed from the older girl. Older girl you can see anger in her face. I don't know if old boy here is doing Catholic seminary on her or some shit, but there's something going on there. You can sense it.
It'd be like the boy have to quit as soon as she's old enough. She really likes to go to school, but she had to miss last week because she had to keep the baby for me to work.
Mrs. Doby, wouldn't you ever care to have a house of your own?
I'd like to have a house.
How come we don't ask Miss Doby? Where the fuck's Mr. Doby? Huh? Where's old boy? Because you got, 8 kids there? I mean, we can buy one being immaculate conception, but all 8? Where's old dude at, or dudes, whatever applies? Where's their input to put milk on the table? Where?
House, if we plan to buy one, if we could ever get enough to pay down on one, we'd buy one.
Do you think this will ever happen?
Well, it don't seem like it.
This is Belglade, Florida, where the Exodus has its beginning every year. The migrants call it their home, but the circus people call their winter quarters their Sarasota. Charles Goodlett, chief of police of Belglade, says,
the problem that we have now are the ones that come here that don't have the money to rent a room. They'll sleep around the bars, in the grass, in the packing houses, around the lake area, in the parks, any place they can find to sleep, to rest for a few hours. They come here with one thought in mind, is to survive till the end of this season.
All I'm hearing is the original war on homelessness. You know, these guys are homeless and they don't want them to be around.
And save enough money to get to the next state, going north.
from towns like this throughout Florida and throughout the South, the 2 to 3 millions move out on their annual migration, which ends in late November. They carry with them whatever little they possess, whatever little they are. At the Okeechobee labor camp, while families were preparing to move north, there was still some work in the bean fields. Children, as usual, were left to fend for themselves.
Jerome, how old are you?
9.
9. Do you go to school?
Yes.
Where do you go to school, Jerome?
At the Okeechobee Elementary School.
I see. What is your sister's name?
Lois.
That's Lois. And what are your other sisters' names?
Catherine. And Beulah.
Catherine and Beulah. What happened to your foot, Jerome?
Dig a nail in at the battle wash eyes.
So you drove a nail in?
Look at that. Poor baby has a nail in his foot. And he has to watch his 3 younger sisters while mama's out there working.
And out by the wash house. What did your mother do for that?
She put some alcohol on it.
Where do you sleep, Jerome?
In his bed.
You have this big bed?
Yes.
What happened? How did you get that hole in that bed there, Jerome?
The rats.
The what?
Rats.
Now, Jerome, you are taking care of Kathy, of Beulah, and Lois.
Yes.
Now, are you going to give them lunch today?
Yes.
What are you going to feed them?
I don't know.
Do you have any food here to give them?
Yes.
What time does your mother come home?
I don't know.
The following day, Aline King, the mother of Jerome, Kathy, Lois, and Beulah, again was picking beans.
Aileen King, I saw your children yesterday at the Okeechobee camp. Why didn't you put them in the nursery?
I don't make enough to pay for it.
How much does it cost to put them in?
85 cents.
85 cents.
That's right.
Aileen, what time did you come out the field this morning?
6 o'clock.
What time would you get home?
About 3:30, 4 o'clock.
6 this morning to 4 o'clock this afternoon.
That's right.
How much did you earn?
$1.
$1?
That's right. $1.
Is that because the beans were of poor quality?
That's right.
Has this happened before?
That's right.
How much will your food cost you today?
About $2.
Aileen, how old are you?
29.
How many children do you have?
14.
How old were you when you first started working in the field?
Okay, I'm sorry. This is what it's about right here, y'all. Whenever you hear women talking about sexual reproduction rights, this chick's 29 years old, 14 kids, y'all. Keep playing games. Keep thinking she ain't gonna be out there fucking, because she obviously is. Obviously had no access to birth control. And zero accountability by the men for a couple of reasons, economic. These stories, she's not alone. Oh, girl before her wasn't alone. This is this real reality of the thing. So before we start pointing fingers at chicks that go and have abortions, or chicks that are on birth control, or chicks that screws with rubbers, what's the alternative? A bunch of kids sitting up in the house with nails and feet, being fed old beans that been up there on the stove for days, probably. It's not a very pretty world. And the more you realize this, the more you become aware, the more uglier the world becomes. Let's continue. Dear God.
8.
You've been working 21 years in the field?
That's right.
Aileen, do you ever think you'll be able to get out of this kind of work?
No.
All the migrants travel fourth class. If there is a privileged class, they ride in their own jalopy, in the best Jode family tradition.
Babies up in there.
The long journey begins. Through Atlanta, Nashville, Indianapolis, en route to the field.
Now think about it. Why do you think a lot of these people are on these buses right now in the 60s? Because their land was taken from them back in the 50s. Remember the first part of this report. There's always a method to the madness. This is showing you the human side of the consequences of the federal land seizures of people, poor people, in their farms.
Fields and orchards of America. Lowe has been following the migrants for the past 9 months. Some are freewheelers who travel as a family unit. He met the Parsons family as they were about to leave Belgrade tomatoes for Indiana strawberries.
Mr. Parsons, do you think the farmers you work for care about your problems?
No, sir. They're not in particular worried about you. They just want their stuff out and you get away as quick as possible.
Would you say that you're welcomed when you're needed?
Well, that is the only time that you are welcome, is when they are needing you. They're friendly and everything, but once they're done with you, well, they'd rather for you to move.
Did they ever ask you to leave their places?
Oh, yeah. They tell you if you finishing up like tomorrow, well, they had rather for you to be out and gone in about 3 days, and that way it'll cut down on their electric bills and all of the other stuff.
Wow.
What do you want most in this world for you and your family?
Wow.
I'd like for my family to be well.
I wish I could flash back to those pictures of the kids' faces. Hold on. Look at this one's here. Look at the faces, man. I know
Cut down
some
on
of
their
it could be
electric bills and all of the other stuff.
What do you want most in this world for you and your family?
Now, I don't know if this is an act. They obviously got makeup on. But that's some squalor type living, yo.
Family.
I'd like for my family to be well, stay together as much as possible.
Now, how are they going to be well? If you know, oh boy, the farmer was probably making those spray pesticides, and they're coming home with that pesticide juice on these clothes. Probably got in the wash with the babies. Everybody's getting juiced by pesticides. And this dude don't even realize it. You can see the effects. He looks dumbed down, like he took one fluoride drink too many.
I'd like to be on a farm somewhere out away from so many people, to where they could attend one church and be interested mostly in one school. And that way I believe they'd all be better satisfied.
Mr. Parsons, do you think this will ever happen?
Not the rate that I'm going now, no.
Now, Mr. Parsons could be a drunk. Now, I did get, he knows about whiskey. But damn, do you blame dude? I mean, if he was living nowadays, you would have been looking at a straight up opioid or crystal meth addict out there picking with the family. Let's kick more.
Most of them ride 1,500 to 2,000 miles to work in vehicles owned by crew leaders who recruit the workers for the migration north. This is the Roach family looking for work.
Mr. Roach, how did you happen to come to this place? Well, I came to Augusta, and I was talking to some people, and they told me to came on down to Waycross, that it was a lot smarter work around Waycross, see? Well, how many miles have you been traveling looking for work so far? About 1,600 and something. Mr. Roach, where did you spend the night last night with your family? Over in the woods. Pulled up on the side of the road. A little dirt road that's left side in the woods, outside the car. May I ask you, sir,
really
what
his
did
kids? I'm looking at the faces of those children. I'll do another show.
you had for dinner and your family last night? Well, we had bologna sausage and loaf bread. That isn't very good food for a growing family, is it? Well, we made on it. How much money do you have in the world right at this moment? I only have about $1.45. Well, what do you intend to do about food for your family today? Well, I've always worked and I always figured I could get work. I have never been where I couldn't get a little something to do.
The vegetables the migrants picked yesterday moved north swiftly on rails. Produce en route to the tables of America by trailer is refrigerated and carefully packed to prevent bruising. Cattle carried to market by federal regulation must be watered, fed, and rested for 5 hours every 28 hours. People, men, women, and children, are carried to the fields of the north in journeys as long as 4 days and 3 nights. They often ride 10 hours without stop for food or facilities.
That's a pleasant way of saying those buses was funky as hell.
The first stop is normally at Willie, Florida, 1 mile from the Georgia border, a checkpoint for farm labor leaving the state.
Okay.
There are other stops, Kingsland, Georgia, for bread and sandwich meat. Darien, Georgia, for facility.
All they're eating is carbohydrates, which would turn to sugar, and whatever other slop that might be available. This is an appropriate name for this program, Harvest of Shame. It is shameful that in this nation, this type of stuff, well, it doesn't happen much nowadays because a lot of farms are automated. So now instead of picking farms, you're going to have to find something else to do. And a lot of times that other thing you have to do is running drugs, doing crime, doing, I guess, sexual things to make a go. This is what's wrong, especially seeing how all money's artificially created.
A roadside stop en route in South Carolina.
But one thing you know is you still don't see people sagging their pants, as if that even matters. And you don't see people looking emaciated. Even back then, even if you were poor, you still look clean. You came out the house, you wore stuff the best you could, you put on your best clothes, and you came out looking like $1 million. Even if you didn't, even if you only had $1.40 in your pocket. But not nowadays. We lost that, y'all. People come out the house looking and smelling any old kind of way, expecting people to somehow make some sort of accommodation for their self-degradation. Let's continue.
Yeah,
1,000 miles north of Belgrade, Florida, by way of U.S. Route 17 and 301. Through Jacksonville, Savannah, Charleston, Wilmington, and New Bern is Elizabeth City, North Carolina, a bean stop, good for 6 weeks' work.
A bean stop. I mean, this makes me sick to my stomach knowing human beings, whole lives, caught up in this mess.
Camp was home for 40 days for the families of Tom Lockett's crew, now 30 hours out of Belgrade.
Miss Blakely, how many years have you been working in agriculture, in the fields?
Oh, practically all of my life. I haven't did no other work much but in the field all of my life. I raised all my kids working in the field.
I noticed that there's some straw over there. What is that for?
Well, that was the straw they brought for the people to sleep on.
Well, weren't mattresses supplied here?
They used to be, but they ain't now.
Mrs. Blakely, where is the water supply over here?
That's it right there.
For how many people?
For this and that over yonder, they all use the same.
And how many bathrooms are there here?
Now.
Where do you use the bathroom? Where are the facilities?
Don't have one. We use our tin tubes.
Mrs. Brown, how did the children fare on the journey up north?
Well, they got kind of fretful, and got so riding, handling them. But we made it.
Miss Brown, may I ask how old you are?
I'm 37.
Mrs. Brown, how many years have you been working in the fields?
All my life.
Do you remember how old you were when you started?
I was about 8 years old.
Would you like to get out of this work?
I sure would.
Do you think you'll ever be able to?
I'm hoping so.
Do you think you'll be able to, though?
I don't know.
20 miles from Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, the workers, driven 900 miles north by crew leader Norman Hall, picked beans at the prevailing rate of 50 cents a hamper. Lunch is not a picnic, whether brought from the labor camp or purchased at the open-air kitchen, or in a bottle, heated by the rays of the sun.
In a survey in 21 states conducted by the National Council of Churches, the migrants themselves listed the evils of labor camp life. Bad housing, flies, mosquitoes, dirty beds and mattresses, unsanitary toilets, and...
Oh, I can imagine. Don't forget, these people didn't have no maid service. And the mattress that you're sleeping on might have been somebody's mattress the other week. Not to be gross here, y'all, but how much fluids and juices were spilt on those mattresses? These are abysmal conditions. Hopefully you're enjoying your feast.
Lack of hot water for bathing. One employer of hundreds of migrant laborers was asked, are they happy people?
Well, I guess they got a little gypsy in their blood. They just like it. A lot of them wouldn't do anything.
Little gypsy in their blood. They like it. Wow, they love the squalor, dude. I wouldn't feel right paying them anymore. They wouldn't know what to do with it. I reckon I'd just keep it. Wow, this mentality. It's what's killing humanity.
Anything else? A lot of them don't know any different. That's all they want to do. They love it. They love to go from place to place. They don't have a worry in the world. They're happier than we are. Today, they eat. Tomorrow, they don't worry about. They're the happiest race of people on earth.
Oh, he said race. Oh, did he just let the beans out the kettle? See, suddenly this program just had a new dynamic. Is a race of people now? And which race of people will he be talking that's just so happy to be eating today and don't have a give a damn shit about tomorrow? Let's hear it from him.
Mr. Jones, do you think that the migratory laborer makes a living wage?
they make a poor living. In other words, sometimes it's just like the farmer. Sometimes when things are good, when the yields are good and they can make good money, they make a good living. But take year in and year out from different seasons, different sections of the country, I'd say no, they make a poor living.
There are days when beans are not ready for harvest, and that's one more day with no income. Ed King, a crew leader, hauled his workers to this camp at Powell's Landing, Virginia, where they worked 5 weeks pulling corn and picking beans. And when the fields have been stripped in North Carolina and Virginia, the trucks and buses again move north. This is Little Creek Ferry, outside of Norfolk. 20,000 migrants are ferried to the fertile fields of the Virginia Cape and the eastern shores of Maryland and Delaware for beans, tomatoes, asparagus, and potatoes. For one crew, hardship was climaxed by disaster, the death of a migrant.
We had a little trouble on the road about 4 o'clock this morning, Sunday morning, and our car run red. One kill.
Has this ever happened before with any crews coming up north?
Once I remember, was the fatal North Carolina.
What happened?
Everybody got killed.
Every year, as predictable as the seasons, there are accidents resulting in death and serious injury to these laborers. On June 6, 1957, at the intersection of U.S. Route 301 and State Highway 102, 9 miles from Fayetteville, North Carolina, 21 migrants were killed, 17 males, 3 females, and the baby boy. The police report stated one of the causes of the high loss of life was the packaging of the occupants of the truck. Today, only 6 states have laws providing for the safe transportation of migrants within their borders. The state of North Carolina is not one of the 6. Secretary of Labor Mitchell.
Hardly a year goes by that we don't read in the paper of some very serious accident where sometimes a dozen or more people have been killed purely because there is no interstate standard with regard to safety.
Another complication of the migrant stream is the constant flow of foreign workers into the available pool of domestic workers. Hundreds of thousands of Mexican braceros and thousands of offshore laborers from the Caribbean area, hired by contract, depress the wage scale of the domestic migrant. This contribution.
Just think you had the same effect in sales, the same effect in modern medicine, where you had people from outside the United States coming in, able to practice medicine, able to open up their own hospitals at an undercut rate. What would happen to those industries? But no one gives a damn about the farm worker. No one gives a damn about the person working with their hands. Any hands will do. And this is why the nation will crumble. Because if it's not patriotic from the very bottom to the very top, it's doomed to fail. I'm going to shut her down for today. That's been about an hour, I'm sure. Yep. And I will carry on this one at another date. Thank you all for listening. This has been TIPM SR Live. Today's date, August 26, 2019, the year of our Lord. As always, I ask you to live your life of integrity without hate, envy, or greed. Brothers and sisters, let's try to be kinder to each other. Peace and power. I'm out.